Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha with the news, your one-stop destination for all that's happened across India and the world through the day today. As always, let's begin with the headlines. Record number of new doctors will be available in next 10 years, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the inauguration of KK Patel Charitable Super Speciality Hospital. COVID cases increase in many states, infection rate more than 2% in Delhi, advisory issued to Delhi government schools. Protests continue against the government in Sri Lanka. Colombo appeals to citizens living abroad for help in repaying external debt. Russia intensifies missile attacks on Ukraine, warns America against extending military aid to Kiev. 5 million people displaced so far in war-torn Ukraine. And Good Friday observed across the world. Christians remember the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Special prayers held in churches, including at the Vatican City. A quick look at what else made news through the day today. Women to get 50% concession in state-run buses in Himachal Pradesh, says Chief Minister Jairam Thakur. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar meets UN Chief Antonio Gutteres, discusses key issues, including the situation in Ukraine. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to virtually unveil 108 feet statue of Lord Hanuman in Gujarat tomorrow. Registration for Amarnath Yatra underway in 446 branches of banks across the country. The Indian Air Force pays glowing tributes to legendary air warrior, late Marshal of Air Force Arjun Singh on his 103rd birth anniversary. Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan puts on hold admissions under special provisions. Union Minister Piyush Goyal lauds pharma industry's contributions at valedictory session of Indian Drug Manufacturers Association. Delhi government to form committee to look into demand for revision of fuel prices. The Met Department forecasts thunderstorms and rain in Bengaluru and Karnataka. 3 Chinese astronauts to return home after completing country's longest space mission of 6 months. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday said the need for Himachal Pradesh to realize its full potential has come. In an address on the state's 75th Foundation Day, the Prime Minister praised the progress made by the state, noting that there were doubts about the state's future due to geographical challenges when it was formed. But the Prime Minister said the state has to be developed at a quick pace in the next 25 years in order to take it ahead in areas like tourism, higher education, research, information technology, also biotechnology, food processing and natural farming. The Prime Minister reiterated his government's commitment to take development to every resident during the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav.
आने वाले 25 वर्ष में हिमाचल की स्थापना और देश की आजादी के 100 वर्ष पूरे होने वाले हैं। ये हमारे लिए नए संकल्पों का अमृत काल है। इस कालखंड में हमें हिमाचल को टूरिज्म, उच्च शिक्षा, रिसर्च, आईटी, बायोटेक्नोलॉजी, फूड प्रोसेसिंग और नेचुरल फार्मिंग जैसे क्षेत्रों में और तेजी से आगे ले जाना है।
In news that could be worrying, cases of COVID-19 are increasing once again in several states of our country. Daily cases have shown a rise in Delhi, Haryana and also in Maharashtra. In just the last 24 days, in fact 24 hours to say, 949 new cases have been reported. The number of active patients has risen to 11,191 across the country. The daily rate of infection is 0.26% and the weekly rate is 0.25%. The number of patients living in home isolation has risen by almost 48% in the last week amid a spurt in the daily cases of COVID-19 in Delhi. And with COVID cases once again on the rise, the Delhi Directorate of Education has issued guidelines for students. The Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, Manish Sisodia, has said that closing schools would be the last option, but he suggested partial closure where specific wings in schools or classrooms where COVID-19 cases are detected can be closed temporarily. A meeting of the Delhi Disaster Management Authority, that's the DDMA, has been called on the 20th of April to review the situation in the national capital.
स्कूल्स को हमने यही कहा है कि अगर कहीं किसी बच्चे को मान लीजिए कोविड होता है या किसी एक पर्टिकुलर विंग को में किसी टीचर को जो अलग अलग क्लासेस में गई हैं उनको कोविड पाया जाता है, तो आप उस विंग को या उस क्लास को टेम्परेरी बंद कर दें कुछ दिन के लिए, जब डिसीजन लेके उसके बाद फिर से खोल दें. पूरा स्कूल बंद करने के लिए हमने नहीं कहा.
Meanwhile, the US Food and Drug Administration on Friday approved emergency use of a device that can detect COVID-19 through breathing. The Inspect IR COVID-19 breathalyzer can be used in doctors' rooms, hospitals, and also temporary testing centers. It gives the result within a span of just 3 minutes. The tool gives 91.2% accurate results by detecting coronavirus-infected samples and 99.3% by identifying negative samples. The tool can test 160 samples daily, which is likely to be increased later. For more details on the COVID situation in the country, I am joined by my colleague Vishal. Good evening, Vishal. So worrying signs, we are seeing increasing COVID cases across different parts of the country. What are experts suggesting? Are these signs of a fourth wave in our country?
Well, good evening, Teena. Not so fast if you look at that way, which is the fourth wave. But of course, it is a cause of concern whenever the COVID infections are on the rise. And the numbers which you stated a little while earlier make us sit back and think as to what needs to be done. And when we come to that question, the answer is pretty simple. We need to go back to the basics vis-a-vis, the COVID pandemic management, and those basics are pretty simple. That is a three-pronged strategy in terms of ensuring that we do not spread infection. That's one, and we do not, get infection from others as well. Wear a mask, maintain, social distancing, and keep washing your hands. Now, this is simple COVID protocol management. But apart from that, if you look at from the administrative point of view, of course, a few weeks back, some time ago, the national COVID protocol had been, put in abeyance because of the numbers which had come down very significantly. But now that the numbers are on increase again, slowly, it looks like it is the state governments, respective state governments and administrations which will have to take the onus here and the step. That's why we heard DDMA's meeting to be, held on 20th out there. It is now up to the state governments to put the COVID protocols in place and COVID management system and apparatus in place wherever they believe that the cases are increasing, and that is how local management of COVID pandemic will have to be done at this particular stage. There is no larger concern. That's what the government says as well, because the rate of hospitalization has not increased in tune with the number of cases which have increased in the past 3 to 4 days. But of course, all of us will have to watch out there.
Absolutely. Very significant. So even though the government has not given out that word of caution that it could be signs of a fourth wave, but as Vishal suggests, we all have to once again go back to the basics, follow the COVID protocols, although the COVID measures, the mandatory measures had been rolled back by the government. But once again, individual responsibilities have to come up once again, and all of us have to go back to the basics and start maintaining COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you, Vishal, for joining us and taking us through those details. Moving on in the bulletin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam via telephone on Friday, in fact. Both countries are celebrating the the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between India and Vietnam this year. The Prime Minister urged Vietnamese leader to facilitate market access of India's pharma and agricultural products in Vietnam. He also reiterated the importance of Vietnam as an important pillar of India's Act East policy and also in implementing Indo-Pacific vision. The Prime Minister also highlighted the historical and civilizational ties between the two countries and expressed happiness over India's participation in the restoration of the Cham monuments in Vietnam. The two leaders, besides, also exchanged views on regional and global issues of mutual interest, including the ongoing crisis in Ukraine and also the current situation in the South China Sea. Prime Minister Modi also dedicated the KK Patel Super Speciality Hospital in Bhuj to the country through video conferencing on Friday. He said the hospital will make good quality healthcare accessible to people at affordable prices. The Prime Minister said better healthcare facilities are not limited to the prevention of disease, but will also promote social justice. The Prime Minister added that India will get a record number of new doctors in the next 10 years due to the government's decision to open medical colleges in every district of the country and efforts to make medical education accessible to all.
अनेकों सुपर स्पेशलिटी अस्पतालों का निर्माण भी किया जा रहा है। देश के हर जिले में मेडिकल कॉलेज का निर्माण का लक्ष्य हो या फिर मेडिकल एजुकेशन को सबकी पहुंच में रखने का प्रयास, इससे आने वाले 10 सालों में देश को रिकॉर्ड संख्या में नए डॉक्टर मिलने वाले हैं।
On the diplomatic front, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Thursday held wide-ranging discussions with UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres and exchanged views on the global impact of the Ukraine conflict as well as the situation in Afghanistan and Myanmar. The External Affairs Minister said he exchanged views on the global impact of the Ukraine conflict, especially on food and energy security. He said the implications of the conflict are serious for developing countries. He also appreciated Gutteres' interest in working with India to effectively address important contemporary challenges. In some other national news, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu visited the Ram Janmabhoomi in Ayodhya on Friday. He offered prayers at the famous Hanuman Garhi temple in Ayodhya and also inspected the construction work at the temple. The Vice President reached Ayodhya by the special presidential train. He was accompanied by Governor Anandiben Patel and Deputy Chief Minister Keshav Prasad Maurya. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla met the general public at the Lok Sabha camp office during his stay in Kota Bundi constituency. He directed officials to resolve the issues that were brought by them. Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister Jairam Thakur has announced a 50% cut in bus fares for women in the state. At a Himachal Day program organized in Chamba, he announced free electricity for power consumption up to 125 units in the state. Water bill will also be waived in rural areas. Talking about another hill state, Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami inaugurated the Bishu Fair at the Someshwar Temple in Jakhol in Uttarkashi. He said the fair will provide more opportunities to showcase the state's culture. Karnataka's Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai targeted the opposition over the death of contractor Santosh Patel. He said the truth will come out after thorough investigation. The national president of Pragatishil Samajwadi Party, Lohia, Shivpal Singh Yadav, dissolved all his party's state work committees, national and state work cells, and also the spokespersons. Party General Secretary Aditya Yadav has called a meeting to decide the future course of action. Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramanna, attended the State Judicial Officers Conference in Telangana. He said to strengthen the judiciary infrastructure, and also the vacancies have to be filled. That's what he reiterated. And he said only then people will get justice on time. UNESCO designates 8 global geoparks for conserving geological heritage of international significance. Which are these and where are they located? More details on that story and much more from around the world when we return after this quick break. Do stay with us.
कहाँ तो तय था उजाला हर घर के लिए, कहाँ चिराग मयस्सर नहीं शहर के लिए. Not even a simple lamp for anybody. That's what this government has reduced us.
कि तुम्हारे पांव के नीचे जमीन नहीं, कमाल ये है कि फिर भी तुम्हें यकीन नहीं.
Thanks for staying with us on the news on Sansad TV. Time now for all the latest updates from the war front in Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry has stepped up its missile attacks on Kiev in response to Ukraine's claims on Russian territory. Russia accused the Ukrainian military of airstrikes on residential buildings in the Russian territory bordering Ukraine. Russian officials said 7 people were injured in these attacks. The Russian Defense Ministry also said its military shot down a Ukrainian Mi-8 helicopter in the Chernihiv region of Ukraine. Russia has warned the United States to stop providing weapons to Ukraine. Russia has also claimed that arms consignments sent to Ukraine by the US and NATO countries could have unprecedented consequences. Meanwhile, battleship Moskva, a part of the Russian fighter fleet stationed in the Black Sea, sunk after being badly damaged. Ukraine says its military launched missile attacks on the warship, while Russia claims Moskva was damaged by fire and that there was no missile attack on it. Meanwhile, as the war continues, 5 million people have been displaced by the war so far. They have been forced to seek refuge in various countries. For countries which are already going through economic crisis, the situation is getting worse. Some news now from other parts of the world. In fact, in our neighborhood, a Sri Lankan delegation is headed to Washington next week, looking to secure up to $4 billion from the International Monetary Fund and other lenders to help limit debt defaults. The team, led by newly appointed Finance Minister Ali Sabri, hopes to start talks with the lender of last resort on 18th April and secure aid as early as a week after negotiations. Meanwhile, rating agency Fitch has downgraded the country's credit worthiness, saying the country is no longer in a position to repay the debt. Credit agency S&P Global has also expressed similar opinion about Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan government said a few days ago it is going through the worst economic crisis in the last 70 years. Meanwhile, the island country has implemented a fuel rationing system. The opposition is spearheading protests in the country amid wildly rising fuel and food prices and massive power outages. Sri Lanka has also appealed to its citizens living abroad for financial help. The new governor of Sri Lanka's central bank has urged people to send help in sterling, pounds, US dollars and euros. A state of disaster has been declared following heavy flooding in KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa. Thousands of people are still without water, food or access to medical treatment, even after 4 days of devastating floods and incessant rains. More than 300 people have died and scores are still missing. Landslides have completely destroyed hundreds of homes and entire residential areas cut off from essential services, including water and electricity, with infrastructure that officials said would take weeks to repair. South Africa's military has been deployed to Durban and the surrounding eThekwini metropolitan area on Tuesday to assist with rescue operations as residents flee the flooded areas. Surging water swept away people in Durban port, the largest and busiest shipping terminal in sub-Saharan Africa. Floodwaters carried away shipping containers and left them in a jumbled pile. Some other global updates in this quick world wrap now. At least 152 Palestinians were injured in clashes with Israeli police at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem on Friday, as thousands gathered for prayers during the holy month of Ramzan. Israel said its forces entered to remove rocks and stones that had been gathered in anticipation of violence. They alleged that Palestinians hurled stones at them. The latest incident comes in the wake of increasing Israeli-Palestinian tensions in recent weeks. China on Friday reported over 3,400 positive and 20,700 asymptomatic COVID cases, majority of them in Shanghai, as the city continued to reel under over a fortnight-long lockdown to contain the virus. Millions of people in Shanghai are facing food shortage and lack of medical supplies due to the lockdown. Positive cases are the highest at the moment in Shanghai. The Nepal government has urged Nepalese residents in foreign countries to open dollar accounts in banks in the country and make investments amidst the economic crisis in the Himalayan region. Speaking at a virtual interaction organized by the Non-Resident Nepali Association, the country's finance minister informed that the government has completed the proper policy process for the dollar account for the benefit of the Nepalese living abroad. Nepal's foreign reserves have been hit by a slump in tourism due to the pandemic. In the US, the Biden administration has green-lighted Nigeria to buy advanced attack helicopters worth nearly $1 billion, despite concerns about the country's human rights record as it battles threats from criminal gangs and extremists in the north. The US State Department has announced that the approval of the $997 million sale of 24 Bell AH-1Z Viper helicopters and related equipment to Nigeria. The related equipment includes guidance, night vision and targeting systems, as well as engines and training support, the department said in a notice to Congress. At least 2 dead and over 200 homes charged in New Mexico after a deadly wildfire started on Tuesday. The fire has forced the evacuation of about 5,000 people in the mountain community of Ruidoso. Thousands of customers in the area remain without power, and Ruidoso schools have been closed until next week. UNESCO has designated 8 new global geoparks in Finland, Sweden, Greece, Romania, Germany, Luxembourg and Brazil. 46 countries now have UNESCO geoparks that the organization says have been recognized for their geological heritage of international significance. Here's more. Vast and beautiful. The Selpo-Selkä Global Geopark in Finland covers 4,506 square kilometers and is home to 1,77,000 people. With stunning lakes and forests, the park has 21% water and 50% forest. The high-quality water is stored in rock formations created by melting glaciers. The park is one among 8 designated UNESCO Global Geoparks, a distinction that celebrates their geological heritage and landscapes. But more importantly, it is a recognition of the way the parks have promoted sustainable development in cooperation with their local communities. Kefalonia Ithaka Geopark in Greece is an island complex with caves, sinkholes and underground streams. Its geological history dates back 250 million years. The Buzău Land Geopark in Romania has a geological history of 40 million years. The park has a wealth of beetle, spider, reptile and crustacean fossils, terrestrial vegetation, mammals and birds. In West Sweden, the Plata Bergens Geopark contains 15 flat-topped table mountains and historical sites that include Sweden's first known stone church built by Vikings in the early 11th century. Southern Brazil has the Caminos dos Canyons do Sul with vibrant and verdant forests and canyons. The Quilombolas, who descended from African slaves, keep the traditional practices of their ancestors alive while supporting visitor centers and museums. Bureau Report, Sansad TV. A major restoration of a Second World War fighter plane is keeping the veteran aircraft flying over Kent. The Spitfire was an icon of the Battle of Britain.
The Spitfire, a piece of World War II history, is flying again. It even made an appearance in the film Battle of Britain, released in 1969.
There's a lump in the throat and a warm feeling, that you brought back something that's so important to our history. And the first time these engines fire up and the Merlin roars again and you see it, taxi off to the end of the runway, it's magic.
The aircraft had a key role in the battle against the Nazis during World War II. 20,000 were built, helping the British Royal Air Force in its flight to control the skies. Now just 70 are still able to fly. 14 of these veteran aircraft are undergoing major restoration. Mechanics piece together original sections with handmade new components at a cost of millions of pounds. But it's worth it for pilots.
Totally. I was a great fan of the Air Transport Auxiliary and all the women pilots who used to ferry them during the war and try to do them proud.
The Spitfire is roaring in the skies again. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And time now for all the sporting action. So it's cricket today first. Joe Root has stepped down as England's Test captain with immediate effect. Root was at the helm for 5 years, and though his personal form has been great, England have been unable to win an Ashes series under Root, considered a benchmark for any English or Australian Test skipper. The loss against the West Indies in the recently concluded series in the Caribbean proved to be the final blow for Root. England won 27 of the 64 tests under Root with 26 losses. His side have won only one of their last 17 test matches, a record that made his position untenable. Talking about the IPL, a superb all-round performance by Gujarat Titans skipper Hardik Pandya has taken his team to the top of the table in the IPL this year. Against Rajasthan Royals, who were at the top going into the match, Hardik played a scintillating innings of 87 not out off just 52 balls. He also took a wicket and caused a memorable run-out to help his team win by 37 runs. Titans scored 192 for 4, batting first. Jos Buttler gave hope to Rajasthan, but 2 wickets, including that of Buttler in one Lockie Ferguson over, derailed the Royals, could reach only 155 for 9. In hockey, the Indian men's team defeated an inexperienced Germany 3-1 in the second match of the double-leg tie to consolidate its lead at the top of the standings in FIH Pro League at Bhubaneswar. They had earlier won the first match 3-0. Vice-captain Harmanpreet Singh continued his goal-scoring spree with a brace to extend India's lead in the match, with half a dozen of Germany's 22-member squad making their senior debut here. The vast gap between the two sides was clearly visible. In badminton star Saina Nehwal has criticized the Badminton Association of India on the schedule mismanagement of the association. The Indian shuttler has said that she was shocked by the media's assumption that she does not wish to defend her medals at the Commonwealth and Asian Games. Saina has clarified that she wants to participate in both multi-nation tournaments, but she cannot because of the hectic schedule. Moving to tennis now. Alejandro Davidovich Fokina of Spain has continued his giant-killing act at the Monte Carlo Open. Having scalped top seed Novak Djokovic in the opening round and David Goffin in the pre-quarters, Davidovich beat 10th seed American Taylor Fritz of United States to make it to the semi-finals of the Masters Series tournament. Davidovich won 2-6, 6-4, 6-3. And before we wrap up, a quick reminder of the top stories of the day today. Record number of new doctors will be available in the next 10 years, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the inauguration of KK Patel Charitable Super Speciality Hospital. COVID cases increase in many states. Infection rate more than 2% in Delhi. Advisory issued to Delhi government schools. Protests continue against the government in Sri Lanka. Colombo appeals to citizens living abroad for help in repaying external debt. Russia intensifies missile attacks on Ukraine, warns America against extending military aid to Kiev. Meanwhile, 5 million people have been displaced so far in Ukraine. And Good Friday observed across the world. Christians remember the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Special prayers held in churches across the world, including the Vatican City. So that's it from us in this bulletin. Thank you for your time. Good night.